What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back in the video. Today we're taking a look at the running backs that have risen the most by ADP since the NFL draft. Take a look at their new ADPs, and we'll talk about how much I would want to draft them in that range. Start things off with the Chicago running backs. The Bears only drafted Kyle Monangai in the 7th round. As things stand right now, you could argue that Swift and Roschon have survived the offseason to a large degree. That's why their ADPs are increasing. Roschon up 3 rounds. He's the largest riser of any running back, up 3 rounds to running back 52, going in round 15 on Underdog. That's closer to round 12 in Redraft. DeAndre Swift up 2 rounds. He's going as the running back 27 now. That's round 7 on Underdog, 5 in a Redraft league. Between the two, I think the ADP on DeAndre Swift makes a little bit more sense. That's the one I would like a little bit more. This is clearly an offense that is going to throw the football a lot. And while the target share of really any individual player, but definitely any running back, isn't going to be super high, again, just because they have so many great playmakers, Swift is the style of running back that'll fit this team really well. I think he's probably in line for fewer carries than he's had each of the last 2 seasons, but I wouldn't be surprised if the reception and touchdown numbers increased, both of which are more valuable in fantasy than carries. It's also a little bit less likely that they bring in a running back to compete for his role, whether they sign Chubb, they trade for Travis Etienne, trade for a different running back we're not thinking of, whether Monangai breaks out, right? All of those outcomes still leave Swift as, at worst, change of pace and third down back. Probably not any world where he's fully featured, fully has a huge role on the ground and all through the air. But all potential running backs that they would add would be more so running backs they want to use on early downs, less so taking Swift's role. So I think his role is pretty secure. That kind of lowers the risk. And since we're pretty sure the offense is going to be good, that lowers the risk even further. Makes him a pretty solid pick in his range. I think more that if they add a running back, the ceiling is more impacted, right? If they bring another running back, now we're like, okay, they really want to use them on the ground. Now the carry ceiling can only be so high. And of course, the overall ceiling can only be so high if you're just straight up not on the field for a chunk of plays. In the middle rounds of drafts, I think his upside is worth taking a shot on. Could he be like Jahmyr Gibbs light, right? Not as good of a player, not as good of an offense, potentially not as good of a role, but in that style of player that if Chicago gets going and they're really good through the air and they're scoring a lot of touchdowns, he'd be a good player to benefit there. In that general range of the draft, I still prefer guys like Montgomery, Judkins, Caleb Johnson over DeAndre Swift right now as things stand on May 12th. But this is a spot that we're going to, gain further intel on once camps open up. Of course, the ADP is going to be impacted there as well. But if we find out that he really is going to have a very strong role, we'll move him up in the rankings. Role's not as good, we'll move him down. I do also want to note, I feel like maybe we're a little bit harsh on DeAndre Swift's career so far. Through 5 seasons, he's got 878 yards, 1,069 yards, 931 yards, 1,263 yards, and last season, 1,345 total yards. He's never played less than 13 games in a season. He's never scored fewer than 6 touchdowns. He's never had fewer than 39 receptions. So again, I don't think he's some slam dunk amazing pick. I think I have him ranked relatively where he's going in drafts now. But if things break his way, he does have a pretty good amount of upside this season. And then again, for Roschon, I don't like him as much because, again, if they bring in another running back, it's to take touches away from Roschon. It's to take touches away from Monangai. Those are the guys he'd be competing with. And so he's at further risk of, being past the depth chart, them trading for a back. All these different things are more risk thrown on Roschon. And so I don't know. And I don't think he as a player is all that amazing. So I don't think it's really worth the upside of taking that risk. Next up, we've got Austin Ekeler up 2 rounds by ADP, now going in round 14 on Underdog, close to round 11, 12 in Redraft. This is one I can't really get behind. I was fine with Ekeler last season because the thesis last year was we thought that he was inefficient the year prior because of the injury. That ends up playing out. Like, it was absolutely the case that he was less efficient before. He was not dust. He averaged 4.8 yards per carry, 10.5 yards per reception last season. He was highly efficient when he touched the football. So, you can look at that and say, okay, he was not dust. It was the injury last season, obviously not dust, looking at those numbers. And so I think that's why people are like, okay, we can kind of run it back again this season. Other part of the thesis was like maybe Washington breaks out. Maybe, he's their clear passing down back. And all of that, turned out to be true. And you throw on top, the Commanders were awesome last season. Like, Daniels turns into a huge breakout. They finished 6th in points per game. I think on the high end, even if you were looking at like a 90th percentile projection during the offseason, nobody actually thought they were going to be like a top 5 offense in points per game. And they nearly did that. Brian Robinson Jr. still missed 3 games. He was limited in a few others. And so you're looking at all of this and you're like, wow, Ekeler must have really worked out last season. But no, because even in the games where Brian Robinson Jr. was injured, even in the games where they were trailing, they still never really gave Ekeler a lot of touches. And like, he was good on a per touch basis, but he maxed out at 14 touches. And he still provided teams with a negative playoff and championship rate over expectation. And that's my concern, right? Even if Brian Robinson Jr. gets hurt this season, Ekeler's probably maxing out at 12 to 14 touches in those games. And you look at his yardage output in the games where he had at least 11 touches, it was around 64 per game, which again is fine, but more thinking about a best case scenario for a player. If the best case scenario is their good games around 64 yards, it just becomes a situation where it's not worth taking them. Like, I would rather go down swinging in this sort of range than draft someone who doesn't really have any sort of chance of breaking out. Ekeler probably going to outperform his ADP. But again, to be clear, he did that last season. Last season, he finished as a running back 35 overall, 34 in points per game. He was drafted 39th. So you get a little bit of value there. Finishes a low-end running back 3. Again, despite this, teams that drafted him made the playoffs and the championship at a lower rate than average. So it's not about just finding players who are going to slightly outperform their ADP. It's about drafting league winners. And at this point in his career, on this team, not a bad team, but a team that's not going to dump off a ton of running backs, on this team at this point in his career, Ekeler not going to be a league winner. Doesn't deserve to see his ADP going way up just because they didn't draft someone. Next up, we've got the Dallas running backs. Javonte Williams up a round and a half, now going in round 10 on Underdog, closer to round 8 in Redraft. Jaden Blue also up a round. He's going in round 11, closer to round 9 in Redraft, just a round behind Javonte Williams. This is like kind of a weird situation where, Blue is up because of the potential of the landing spot. If you can be the number 1 back in Dallas, that's a good landing spot. His ADP goes up. But then Javonte Williams is also up because people don't really view Jaden Blue as that amazing of a prospect. Like, it's not that Blue is bad, but he's probably like the 10th or 12th best running back prospect in this year's class alone. And since most people kind of assumed that Dallas would take a running back earlier than they did, you see the ADP on Javonte Williams go up. You could also think that like maybe because they waited a little bit longer running back, maybe they liked Javonte Williams a little bit more than we thought before. It's just tough because, 2 years after the knee injury, Javonte Williams, he's averaging 3.6, 3.7 yards per carry. Like, he should be removed enough from the injury. You could say the 3.6 yards per carry year, that was, the first year back from the injury. Maybe that's the reason, but in a second year back, 3.7 yards per carry in a pretty good offensive situation last season in Denver. Like, he had every chance to be good last season. The backup running backs were not doing anything. They didn't trust those guys. He was given a ton of touches. And again, a very good offense. He just never really hit. That's not amazing. It doesn't give us like a ton of confidence in him this season. Again, they gave him every opportunity to be a featured running back. He was just never able to capitalize on that. So while this whole situation is tough because the odds are really none of the 4 running backs are all that amazing, someone is going to start, and whoever does start is going to be someone we want on our teams in fantasy. Honestly, I hope Phil Maffa just like turns out to be some stud. It's not going to happen. He's like 235 pounds. He's a pure early down grinder. He's not someone we ever want in fantasy, but we really just don't know. As things stand right now, since we have no idea going into camp, I guess just give me Blue 1 round later by ADP. I do think Javonte Williams should be drafted ahead of Jaden Blue. That's how I have the rankings right now. But it's only barely, so I guess give me the 1 round discount just since we don't know. I think both ADPs are fair. I think they're now at a spot where it makes sense. You're kind of capitalizing on some of that value, some of that potential, but not taking them into the single-digit rounds, at least on Underdog, and then pushing into more middle rounds in Redraft. Not taking them too early in those ranges, because in those ranges, there are some running backs we feel very confident about. Know the ceiling is also there, but the chances of hitting that ceiling are also a lot higher. I wouldn't say it's super high for either of these running backs, so I think, again, ADPs right now are fair. If they keep rising, I'm going to be out on both them. Moving a tad earlier in drafts, Isiah Pacheco is up a round and a half, now going in the middle of round 8 on Underdog, 6th round in Redraft. Personally, I'm not in love with his ADP. It comes at a tough range. It's a spot where, like, I just feel like I don't really want to be attacking running backs, because you either just missed out on a range of running backs that I love, or you took that range, and thus drafting Pacheco, unless you went RB0, is kind of like a less valuable pick. Like, the odds are your first running back was not in like the middle rounds, again, unless you went RB0. And so if you're kind of like getting that range I love, then drafting Pacheco as kind of like a bench piece, it just feels like you could do a lot better at other positions, whether you want to go quarterback in that range, tight end, wide receiver. It just feels like a spot where you might do that instead of attack running back. If you look at the backfield, it's him, it's Elijah Mitchell, it's Brashard Smith, Kareem Hunt, who signed a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. About 65% of that was guaranteed. Don't really know how this backfield's going to shake out. It just feels a little bit risky taking Pacheco this early. If Kareem Hunt is on the roster, he's a threat, right? And they gave him a contract for this year. They know how good he is. They know how much he's probably going to regress. Like, they wouldn't have given him a contract if they didn't expect to use him to some degree. So him being on the roster, that's a problem. Brashard Smith, someone that probably has a pretty low chance of stealing meaningful work this season. He is someone they like. They want to get some touches to. Some people have comped him to Pacheco, but again, I don't think he's a huge concern. But then they do have Elijah Mitchell. I know he can't stay healthy, but it almost feels like people just don't care at all that he's there. I do think the most likely outcome is Pacheco's the number 1 running back on this team, but Elijah Mitchell still signed a $2.5 million contract this offseason. A little bit over half of that is guaranteed. The rest of that involves playing time, yardage, and touchdown incentives. He just turned 27, so he's not old. Again, it's been a problem staying healthy for Elijah Mitchell, but he's been great when healthy. He has a higher career rushing yards per game average and a higher career yards per carry than Pacheco. And let's not pretend like Pacheco has been like a model of health throughout his career. He's missed 13 games over the last 3 years. Pacheco also doesn't have high end draft capital supporting him. I know that's not a huge problem, but we have absolutely seen historically that teams just don't care as much when you have a running back break out, but they're at like kind of a later draft capital. They didn't invest as much in them. They have a really good year, a ton of touches. We expect them to get a lot the next season. And then all of a sudden they're part of a rotation or they get passed and we're like, where did that happen? That happens a lot more often than we think at later round running back picks. He's also only hit a 70% snap share in 7 of 49 games in his career. So I'm not saying that Pacheco is going to be a bust, but there are certainly plenty of paths to failure for Pacheco. He's only hit 100 total yards in 8% of his career games. So the ceiling, even if he is, their number 1 running back, feels fairly limited. So I don't know. I'm not totally on board with his ADP. Again, not even only from a player standpoint, just from like a draft strategy standpoint. You just missed on an awesome range for running back. Don't further compound that miss by taking someone with a ton of risk. It's not for me. I wouldn't go there. Looking a little bit in the earlier rounds, the largest riser in the early rounds is up 3 spots, and that is Chase Brown, now going in the middle of round 3 in Underdog, late 2nd round in Redraft. I have him close to in line with his ADP. I am a little bit behind ADP. I will say across 6 drafts, not that much of a sample, but in 6 paid leagues, I have yet to take him. Again, not a huge sample, not something to worry too much about. I still haven't graded out as an okay pick, but my projection right now is 263 touches, 1,230 yards and 10.8 touchdowns. That's a pretty decent projection, and yet I'm still a little bit behind ADP on him. Backfield-wise, there's not a ton of competition, but there's almost no way he has the role that he had last season. Like, even with Moss missing half of the season, Herbert only had 36 total touches, and then I kid you not, no other running back had a touch. So you had 97 touches through 8 games for Zach Moss. He gets injured. They go out and they trade for Khalil Herbert. We're like, okay, they'll use another running back now. He gets 36 touches. The other 283 all go to Chase Brown. I just don't see that happening again. They brought back Samaje Perine. Moss is now, or at least going to be healthy. He's probably not fully healthy right now, but he's going to be healthy this season. And then they drafted Taj Brooks. Someone is going to be the odd man out of that rotation, but they're going to use running backs more than they did, especially to close last season. 36 touches for Herbert and then everything else going to Chase Brown. I just don't see that happening again. My guess is that they try to use Brooks kind of as a change of pace running back. He's a thicker running back, I guess, than Chase Brown. They've mentioned liking him in pass protection. We'll see once camp opens up. You can say that, but who knows once, we get pads on, you're actually scrimmaging, you're actually in preseason. Do they really trust him out there? I don't know. It's just like you also just have another situation where Chase Brown, late 5th round pick, I know he was great in fantasy because he was being featured last season, but teams just do not feel married to these late round running backs, especially when they're not all that efficient. I would get it if he went out there and he averaged like 5.5 yards per carry. Chase Brown only averaged 4.3 yards per carry last season, a very low 6.7 yards per reception. Like, there is absolutely a chance that he's not passed, but it's much more of a rotation this season. Maybe it's 1A, 1B. It could even be 1 and 2. Having a 1 and a 2 would still be way less touches than last season, where he was a featured running back for half of the season. It's just not a situation where we're willing to spend a 2nd round pick on that. Unless we get, further clarity in camp, which we totally could. But if we don't get that clarity yet, and right now we obviously don't have that, to spend a 2nd round pick in redraft or a 3rd round pick, mid-3rd round pick on Underdog, there are so many players that we know are going to have a locked-in role this season. I've been going with them instead of a little bit of unknown at running back with Chase Brown. So that'll do it for this one. Please leave a like if you watched this far and download my app for free. Link in the description box down below. You can mock draft on there. You can compete against me in not only the season long rankings, but also an accuracy competition, picking must draft players, sleepers, and busts. Again, all free to do. Link in the description box down below. So I'll catch you on the Friday video. And thanks for watching.